Hi, I'm Bill Jameson, Executive and Artistic Director of the Early Music Society of the Islands. Today I'm speaking with Matthias Maute, Artistic Director of Montreal's Ensemble Caprice and Ensemble Art Chorale. Matthias will be bringing his wonderful musicians and his boundless energy to a concert on Saturday, March 23rd, titled Hallelujah and Trumpets. It will be held at the First Church of Christ Scientist, 7:30 p.m. Welcome, Matthias.
Thanks for having me.
So maybe to start off, could you just give a little bit of history of yourself and Ensemble Caprice and Ensemble Art Chorale?
Yes, Ensemble Caprice has evolved from a chamber music group that was actually founded in Germany in the late 1980s to a
Ah,
full-fledged period orchestra. Like this year, we tackle like Mozart Requiem. Next season, we'll do a Beethoven Ninth on period instruments. So it has evolved in a very interesting way. And since years now, we are bringing music on a larger scale across Canada on trans-Canadian tours, and we are very happy about this collaboration with early music on the islands and Victoria, where we have just had great concerts in the past. And since I happen to be the artistic director of Ensemble Caprice, but also the artistic director of Ensemble Art Chorale, a professional choir here in Montreal. It's quite easy for me to put together these two organizations. And so it will be, I think, the third time that we come to Victoria in that package, Ensemble Caprice with Ensemble Art Chorale, something that I like, that I love most as a musician, because when you think about the repertoire for voices and an orchestra is among the most spectacular that has ever been written, because composers had everything. They had all the different voices of the instruments, strings, winds, and plucked instruments, but they also had and they had the human voice. So it's sort of the ultimate goal where you can go as a composer, as a musician, and to be able to do that now on a larger scale and even do that on tour and coming from Montreal all the way to Victoria. This is a true highlight for us as musicians, and so we are very happy to come to Victoria.
yes, this is sort of set up as a kind of a triad of concerts. 3 years, over 3 years. First concert I think was Bach oriented. Second concert was Vivaldi, and now
Yeah.
this concert is focused more on Handel. So the three biggies of the period, basically, one after the other. It's been great. Last two concerts have been very successful, very well received. Um, you
Thank
managed to
you.
put together always put together an interesting and exciting program. So looking very much forward to this next one. So why why Caprice? I mean, is your ensemble capricious in nature? Is there a philosophy behind that particular name?
That is so interesting because actually no one asks that question anymore. At some point, people just get used to it, and it's whatever you call it. It turns out because back in the day, I still lived in Germany, and Caprice seemed to be something that, first of all, had a bit of a French touch, which seems to be really fancy, and turns out to be perfect now since I live in Quebec, a
Oh,
francophone
yes.
province. But also, I quite like the idea to, yes, capricious has that underlining color. Because a lot of the work is actually tainted or colored by the fact that I myself I'm a composer, I'm a arranger, so I don't believe in living in a museum. And classical music and historical performance practice is very close to sort of reconstructing the way things were back then. It is a naive thought because now today we know that it's simply impossible and maybe not even desirable to have like exactly 100% of authenticity because our ears today are different from how listeners listened back then. Our expectations are different from what listeners expected back then. Our background is like we listen to early music on the backdrop of contemporary music, on romantic music, and as a contrast to that, which certainly was not the case in the 18th century. So, in that rather confusing environment, which is actually only confusing when you really start thinking about it, but hey, Yeah, we have no choice, but we have to think about our role in the world. So it always seems to me very important to find a connection between the music from back then and us as musicians today, and between the music from back then and the listeners that are sitting right there in the hall. And to find ways to connect all of that. And the beauty, all of a sudden, it's more than just playing music. It always feels to me like establishing a dialogue across time, across space. So it's not just beautiful music. It's something that, in some ways, is part of the mystery of music, that it always feels like we connect on deep levels that go beyond social conventions. Like imagine a concert hall, you have people, plenty of people, hundreds of people in a hall, most of them you have never met as a musician. But the goal is that we all share one common deep experience together by sharing this music. And I think that's something that is particular. It's a mystery of music that can be achieved by live music. And that's why I'm so fascinated about giving concerts. Something happens that we just don't have in our daily life. And if you think about all these different elements, it's just about connections that are created between people by means of music. And all of a sudden, music from like which seems to be far away, distant from the 18th century, becomes music of today, music that was written for us right there in the moment. And at the same time, we as musicians, we as listeners, we connect with people from the past, which creates sort of a universe of, yeah, we all in some ways belong together. And that's why Caprice has, it's a bit of a program, I have to say, which was not really thought through back then in a day, but it has acquired all these different characters and sidelines that I think are so important to being a musician today in a complicated 21st century.
Thank you. Interesting. Yes, yes. There's always this conflict, this question, and the evolution of the what used to be referred to as the early music community now is referred to as the historically informed music
Right.
community. There's always this pulling back and forth between the idea of trying to achieve as much as we can some kind of degree of authenticity, but then recognizing that it's an unachievable goal because we simply don't know. There's no recordings. We don't know what it actually sounded like, how it was actually interpreted, the music.
And
And
also, I think we underestimate what we, the listener, bring to the music.
yes,
Music is a game of the mind, and to focus only on like the conditions of back then, that's the part which lacks 50% of the facts, because it's the recipient who decides how the music sounds, and that's something we just can't go back to how a listener listened to in the 18th century, because they did not listen to radio with jazz and all kind of pop music and all kinds of different genres, and put their music on and that backdrop. So that changes everything, as we all know. And I think we tend to forget about it, but at the same time, it's very important to be aware of that effect that, to some degree, maybe distorts that authenticity from the 18th century, but creates the authenticity of today. And I think the authenticity of today is equally important than the one from the 18th century. And you put everything together, and at the end, you have a capricious result.
I love it. So how does that inform your actual performance? I mean, I understand what you're saying in terms of we listen to music very differently, of course, because we've come from a totally different background, and indeed. Music is so ubiquitous to us. We hear it all the time, everywhere, in the department store,
Yeah,
in the movies, and wherever, on TV, and so on. Whereas back then, I presume music was um, more of a treat in a sense, more of something that was a special thing that happened. Um, but
right.
how do you take that? Is this a fair question? How do you take that and acknowledge that and actually change how you might present the music as a result?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you give some examples, or is that a difficult thing to put into
It's
words?
well, there's no, I would say there's no straightforward answer, and this means it's an excellent question. So, as a matter of fact, when I think about it, for myself, what it means as a starting point, music has to become a very intense, an intense experience, a personal experience, a musical experience for myself. And only if that's the case, I can assume or aspire that it also will become eventually a musical and intense experience for the people out there. So that's my first goal. So for me, looking at a piece of music is like, okay, what will I really find fascinating in that particular piece of music? And honestly, there are scores I would never perform in concert because I just don't see the point. And I grew up as a recorder player. There's plenty of repertoire I've never played because I was just not interested in. I mean, that just to give an example, sonatas by Loyer, Belgian composer. I played one out of maybe there are 50, 60, I don't know, because I'm not really interested in. And that doesn't mean the music is not good. It's just I can't necessarily see like in our needs, our requirements, our expectations today, how I can deliver on all fronts there. And all of a sudden, the question how you tackle music becomes like really interesting because you think a lot about like what makes a composition average, what makes it beyond average, what makes it beyond well, not even average. What do you like in music? What do you prefer? What is maybe something that you wouldn't do every day, and so on? All of a sudden, all these questions play a role, and that means you're involved in the process of music making in a very personal manner right from the get-go by choosing a repertoire that you think could be just an overwhelming event for yourself. And then hopefully for the people. And for me, that's where everything starts. And only then you open the score and look at it in detail and okay, now let's see what we can do with it. So that's, I think, itself an interesting question. And in general, a little underrated also among musicologists. We try to sort of stay neutral. And as a musician, you don't have a choice. You have to make up your mind. You have to stand up for something that you think this is like out of the ordinary. And in this case, may sometimes make a decision, okay, I won't do this in the middle of the road piece because, hey, life is too short. So, it can go either way.
Yeah,
So that's the
so
very first important point of decision making.
so you need to be excited, and it's that spark that happens in you first, and that then presumably translates to the audience, basically.
Yeah, and it resembles because I'm also a composer. When you have an idea like, okay, now it's about time to write this kind of piece or that kind of piece, and then you think about what does it mean in detail, and you start thinking about like a motif or something, and you put something down, and you think about, not sure about that, and it's just no, it's not, it's in the middle of the road, and then you have to look further, and it's exactly that kind of work that is at the basis of every single composition. Now, someone like Handel, he seemed to have a rather easy access to letting his imagination flow and pick stuff that was interesting for a particular piece or particular circumstances. So he could develop his style on the one hand that we can easily identify as being Handelian. On the other hand, he was always able to, well, always in very many cases, that's what makes him a genius. He was able to push himself and transform his own style and move on. And in the program that we are performing in Victoria, we have one piece that comes from an earlier stage in his career, the Ode for the Birthday of Queen Anne from 1713. And we have the anthem for the founding hospital that's from 1749, so rather late in his life. And so it sort of gives a little bit of an idea about how he moved in his own life as a composer. And again, that's sort of the interest as a musician to dive into all these details while still staying in touch with the overall picture of what, like, for instance, what Handel means while still looking at the even bigger picture, what role are we playing, and what can we do with the situation that we have an audience, and what can we do to everyone embark on the same kind of journey with the most exquisite music. So they're all it's like going like an onion that you peel, and there are all these little layers that all have different kind of connotations and associations.
Excellent. I notice you also have put a piece by Heineken on the program. It's an interesting choice, not a composer of the same profile as Handel, obviously. What was the reasoning behind that choice?
Well, he's one less known today. Does it mean that his compositions are not on the level by Handel? I dare say that when people come out of the concert, they will say that Heineken was at least as good as Handel's pieces.
Hmm.
It's actually quite astounding in that Magnificat that he writes in a typical Italian style, just like Handel, who not only traveled to Italy, but then brought the Italian style, so to speak, to England and the Italian opera. So Heineken was very well versed in Italian opera because of
He
uh,
basically did the same, did he not? He spent time in Italy learning Italian opera world kind of, and then brought that back to Germany.
exactly, and the Magnificat is very well, is very much written in Italian operatic style. All the
Right.
movements are quite short, but with very distinct colors and motifs and textures. And he moves quickly from one kind of instrumentation to another one in the most inspired way. Just the beginning, it's a dream come true. So I'm very happy to include that. And it seems to me, even though Heineken and Handel, as far as I know, have never met, like musically speaking, there's like a very nice dialogue between the two of them, and it just adds one more color to this program. It's also a touching note that the Magnificat in A major that we perform is the last piece that he wrote before a couple of months later he succumbed to a long illness. So famous last words, so to speak, which I think is always interesting to look into what happens when people sort of put together all they got through all the experience through an entire life and put it into a piece of music.
Can you just give us talk a little bit about the anthem for the Foundling Hospital, which is the sort of the closing piece, the big piece with the big Hallelujah chorus at the end.
Yeah, indeed. So it was composed 10 years before Handel's death, and it was Handel's last piece of English church music. Um, so the Handel, we have to know that he was very present as a philanthrope and would be an important contributor to the founding hospital that he cherished, an institution that was founded to house and educate abandoned and orphaned children. So it's actually very touching that Handel, who didn't have a family, didn't have children, he donated vast amounts of money to the founding hospital. And so the anthem that we will perform was written for a fundraising event for the foundling hospital. And so he would, all the receipts of that event would go to the hospital. And Handel, who after many, well, not many, a couple of financial failures, uh, happened to finish his life as a rich man. He generously supported the founding hospital. And by the way, it's also very touching that Handel not only supported the founding hospital, he was also very much involved in the Society of Decade musicians, as they called it, which today is called the Royal Society. That was founded back then as a kind of union. Three musicians of the King's Theatre, the Haymarket, got together, founded that society where they collected money that they would then give out to composers who couldn't work, to musicians who couldn't work anymore. Handel also was very much involved in that, and for that's sort of both stories for me add a lot to the kind of like the way you look at Handel. We always look at composers as being those big geniuses that are sort of disconnected from life, but he was very much involved on different levels. And so these two, his generosity on various levels, for me, is something that I might be even more fond of also presenting his music in concert, because I think we need more of that in general today.
Absolutely. Yes. Good. Um, you like to engage the audience a little bit in the in your programs. One of the things that we've done for the last two concerts, and we'll be repeating again this concert, is getting the audience to to join in. This time, it's a very familiar piece for them to to sing along with. Can you talk just a little bit about how you have found um, how you found that has worked with audiences? Is this something you do frequently with other concerts? Is this a little special thing in Victoria, or and or how have you how has that worked well for you?
I was looking for many years to find ways to break down the wall between the stage and the hall, so to speak. And with my choir, Ensemble A Chorale, we are on a 3-year voyage where we bring, it's called Ensemble A Chorale, Coast to Coast to Coast, where we bring choir music to all the provinces and territories across the nation. And it turns out that singing is just the easiest way to connect. And everyone carries his or her own instrument within the body. So it's just a matter of activating something that we sort of lost a little bit, that sense of, well, I think in soccer stadiums, people still sing in churches, but in our daily life, it doesn't play a role anymore.
Right.
But it has been an element that has connected us through many, many centuries of human history. And to rediscover that in the vicinity of the concert space, it's just a very nice element. And in this particular concert, we do the biggest participative piece we have ever been doing in concert. It's the famous Hallelujah that we all know from Handel's Messiah. But in general, it's less known that this Hallelujah is also the final movement of the anthem for the Founding Hospital, the very anthem we are performing in the same concert. So it actually all like goes a full circle, and we are happy so to rehearse with the audience before the concert the famous Hallelujah and perform it in the concert with everyone. And so that will be an unforgettable moment. I can guarantee that already now.
Ending with a big splash, that will be super. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Excuse me. Just a few words about Ensemble Art Chorale then. How did you come to form that group, and what is the underpinnings of that?
Uh, so the beauty of that choir is a professional choir that has existed since more than 40 years here in Quebec. It's actually older than Ensemble Caprice, and that I ran into only in the last couple of years when the founder had to stay away because, well, had to leave because he, for reasons, health reasons. I was the lucky one who became the artistic director of this choir in 2019. And then, of course, the pandemic happened. But during the pandemic, we started a recording project for the Atma label. And it's like a digital library of a cappella repertoire from the Renaissance to today. So 15 albums
Wow.
that will lead us all the way to 2031. That we record and also put in video and sent out there. So the idea is to reflect the beauty of the choir tradition, a strong choral tradition here in Canada and Quebec, and bring that music and the voice and choral singing to the communities out there. So we often connect with choirs and have our own concert series here at Montreal, the Maison Symphonique. The last concert we had 1,700 people for an a cappella concert. So
Wow.
it's a sort of a new thing because only orchestras perform in this hall, and all of a sudden there's this professional choir, and people just enjoy it. We also there have what we call the grand chœur, the grand choir of up to 150 people that sit in the hall and sing together with us on stage for certain pieces. So it creates a different form of concert, and it's just something that there seems to be a real need for music, but also for vocal music and choral music in particular. And so we are very happy to follow up with that.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to March 23rd and getting you here safe and sound and
Same here.
producing what I'm absolutely confident will be a very exciting and enjoyable concert. Um, and so yeah, so I think we can wrap it up here. And thanks for your time, Matthias. And as I say, we'll look forward to people can get tickets if they go to our website. It's www.earlymusicsocietyoftheislands.ca, just spelled right out. And you can find out more about the concert and get tickets through there. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Can't wait. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you.